working at County Rail Farm, and today I am going to show you the process of tomato grafting as well as share some things that I have learned experimenting with this process throughout this season. The primary benefit of grafting tomatoes is increasing yield per plant as well as increasing the longevity of the growing season. We are working with a pretty short growing season, anywhere from June to mid to late September or early October. So we're hoping that with running the grafting project, we will see more tomatoes throughout the season and also more tomatoes for a longer period of time throughout the season. We chose to do an experiment and we grafted various varieties of cherry tomatoes as well as heirlooms and then a red Jetstar variety, and we're running direct comparisons to see if the grafted plants of those varieties are producing more fruit or lasting longer than the non-grafted varieties. So I'm just going to run through the basic process of grafting as well as the equipment necessary to do the actual grafting process. One thing that I found really helpful was buying a grafting knife that is specifically made for this process, and the benefit to having this instead of using just a blade or a regular knife is that you can control the angle of the cut, which is really important in aiding the healing process, that all of those cuts are made at the same angle. Another essential piece of equipment are grafting clips, and you can see it's a silicone grafting clip. And that aids in the healing process by holding the rootstock plant and the cyclone plant together really well. One thing that I found really important was that you want to add about 2 weeks to your normal seedling timeline in order to allow for the delay in growth during the healing process. So if you're grafting, you're going to want to seed everything two weeks early. And also, because of the variability in success rate with these grafts, it's important that you seed extra plants just in case you have a low success rate or you're completely unsuccessful, so that way you will have backup plants to put in your greenhouse or your field or whatever, just in case the grafting fails. The second most important thing is to have your healing chamber completely set up and ready to go at the time of grafting, so that as you're grafting you can put your plants into the chamber to increase their chance of survival. The general conditions that you want to keep your plants in during the healing process are low light or no light for the first few days, high humidity, anywhere from 90 to 100%, and a temperature somewhere around 80 degrees. And what I found really useful was using a humidity and temperature control mechanism so that it automatically adjusted the humidity and the temperature as the temperature throughout the day changed or the humidity changed. And having something to automatically do that so I didn't constantly have to be checking it or I didn't constantly have to be venting it was incredibly helpful. So this is what we decided to use as our healing chamber. It is a greenhouse table with hoops on it and covered in greenhouse plastic. We experimented with a few designs and this one ended up being the most simple, and fortunately we were able to use materials that we already had around the farm. The most important aspects of the healing chamber are that you can create a complete seal so that the temperature and humidity remain consistent, and if at all possible, you put it in a space where the temperature doesn't fluctuate too much. We decided to do it in the greenhouse and we got about a 50% success rate, which is not bad considering how much our temperature was fluctuating. If I were to do it again, I would prefer to have it in a place with more temperature stability so that the temperature didn't fluctuate as much. We had just a home humidifier in here and a heater, and they were controlled by a temperature control where you can set the humidity and temperature and the humidifier and the heater will kick on and off as needed. I found that it is best to do all of your grafts at once, and that is really useful if you have help. It's a little bit more difficult if you're only one person. In that case, I would maybe recommend doing this in batches, maybe like 2 batches or 3 batches, just to make it a little easier on yourself and to increase the possibility for, or the success rate on the plants. Once you have your healing chamber set up and everything ready to go with that, you want to create a clean space, because another thing that aids in the success of the healing of the plants is low dirt and low pathogens in wounds. Here is an example of a rootstock seedling. The size that you choose is going to really depend on the size of clips that you choose. We did it at about 2 weeks old. So once you have your rootstock seedling, you take the grafting knife and you're going to cut as high above the soil as you can. That way it'll prevent dirt from getting in the wound, and it'll also prevent advantageous roots from forming. So you basically just align the knife and make a clean cut. And so you have your rootstock variety and a nice clean cut there. And then after that, you want to find one of your growing varieties that's a good size, that'll match up pretty well. And so that's what we have here. And then you do the same thing, you make a similar cut on this one. So you can see there's a very similar angle. That knife is really, really useful in creating that. Once you have your growing variety and your rootstock cut, you're going to slide the grafting clip over the rootstock, and then slide your growing variety on top and make sure it's a nice union there. And then you will put this back in the plug and transfer it immediately into the growing chamber. As it grows and as it heals, the silicone clips, they just fall off, which is really nice because that's a good way to tell that they are ready, and that the wound has healed really well. So these are a few of the grafted plants and what they look like about 12 weeks after transplant. We found that the grafted plants are very vigorous, very healthy, and as you can see here, are producing a ton of fruit. Definitely we are finding that they're producing more fruit than the non-grafted varieties, and tomatoes are just starting to ripen. So that is exciting, and we will be taking yield comparisons throughout the remainder of the season to see if the grafted plants are producing more. But by what we have in front of us here, it definitely seems like that's going to be the case. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed going over the tomato grafting process with me. I would definitely say, as a grower, that grafting tomatoes is worth it if tomatoes are a big part of your operation, or if you're looking to increase your tomato yield. A few things that I recommend is that I think that this process is most useful for growing heirloom or red slicer varieties as opposed to cherries. I haven't seen that much of a difference in the cherries that we decided to graft, but the heirlooms and the Jetstar varieties that we chose to graft, the plants seem much healthier, they're growing faster, and there seems to be more fruit on the plants. And yeah.